For thousands of years, the Egyptian pyramids have stood as an unsolved enigma, defying the limits of human understanding. But what if I told you that Nikola Tesla, the brilliant mind far ahead of his time, once revealed a terrifying truth about these ancient structures? A truth that could forever change the way we see history and the universe itself. Are the pyramids merely giant tombs, or are they hiding something far more sinister? Join Mystic Library X as we uncover the mystery, right now. The enigmas surrounding Tesla and the pyramids have long captivated scientists worldwide. Today, I present a story that might even astonish the greatest minds in science. Tesla firmly believed his lifelong masterpiece, the Wardenclyffe Tower, could harness Earth's resonance to unleash an inexhaustible source of electrical energy. The true marvel lay in its wireless transmission, not through wires, but through Earth itself, reaching even the most remote corners of the globe. Tesla's early experiments succeeded. He illuminated incandescent bulbs near the tower. Yet, the scientific community dismissed his technology as delusion, claiming it defied reality, but whispers of an ancient mystery persist. Could this technology have existed for millennia? What truly transpired with the Great Pyramids on the plateau? Their perfect proportions mirroring Earth's dimensions, strange rock formations, peculiar salt deposits, labyrinthine tunnels, and enigmatic doors, could these all be linked to ancient engineering? Was the pyramid a power generator, akin to Tesla's vision, using resonance to transmit energy worldwide? Let's uncover the truth. Christopher Dunn, a mechanical engineer and longtime pyramid researcher, has made fascinating discoveries. Since 1984, at age 28, Dunn noticed that the Great Pyramid appears to share a near-perfect proportional relationship with Earth. For instance, multiplying the pyramid's height by 43,200 yields Earth's equatorial circumference. What is the significance of this extraordinary number, 43,200? If you calculate 12 hours in a day times 60 minutes per hour times 60 seconds per minute, the result is also 43,200. Astronomically, this number symbolizes the equal length of day and night during the spring or autumn equinox when the sun aligns with the equator. While this might seem coincidental, 43,200 traces back to humanity's earliest understanding of music and the Sumerian invention of the base 60 time-keeping system. It is a mathematical code the ancient Egyptians used to connect the pyramid to Earth, no coincidence, but a deliberate choice in its structural design. Upon deeper investigation, Dunn uncovered traces of ancient technology. He discovered stones cut with razor-sharp angles, mechanical/electrical marks, and astonishingly precise joints. Inside the pyramid, the angles are flawless, the precision is extraordinary, and the alignment of the stone blocks is seamless, far beyond random chance. When entering the king's chamber, Dunn's intuition told him that such sophistication and exactness contradicted the idea of an ancient tomb. Archaeologists claim the 4,500-year-old Great Pyramid was the burial site of Pharaoh Khufu, with the king's chamber serving as his final resting place. Yet, no mummy or pharaonic artifacts have ever been found inside. Unlike the opulent tomb of Tutankhamun, most Egyptian pharaohs were buried in the Valley of the Kings, 500 kilometers from the pyramid, where elaborately decorated walls contrast starkly with the pyramid's barren, undecorated interior. In the 1980s, Dunn hypothesized that the pyramid was not a tomb but an advanced technological device. But what was its specific purpose? Upon close inspection, he noted peculiar details: the queen's chamber resembling a sound conduit, diagonal tunnels, and a highly sophisticated passageway leading to the king's chamber. Most striking was the king's chamber's stone door, cut with unbelievably sharp angles. Yet, why was the king's chamber ceiling rough? And why did the door appear melted or vaporized rather than shattered? In 1993, Dunn discovered a door in a hidden corridor featuring two metallic-like protrusions. Why did the ancients design it this way? How were these features connected? During his research, Dunn uncovered clues from archaeological reports. Early Western explorers had documented a thin salt layer on the Queen's chamber walls. He immediately linked this to residue from a chemical reaction with limestone. In 1968, Dunn had attempted to collect salt samples but was blocked by a French team that had already analyzed them. Later, he learned that Dr. Patrick, in a 1978 study, had collected and identified the salt's composition. After analyzing samples from the Italian Geological and Mineral Resources Bureau, they confirmed that the main components of the salt layer were a mixture of calcium carbonate, dextrin, and calcium sulfate. This was entirely accurate, precisely the residue left after high-temperature reactions in the Queen's chamber. And this reaction functioned as an extraordinary pacing mechanism. Suddenly, all the theories in Dunn's mind clicked into place. The operational structure of the Great Pyramid was revealed. You may have used a piezoelectric lighter, which contains a small battery. When pressed, it releases a high-voltage current that pierces the air to ignite escaping gas. This is the principle behind electric lighters. But have you ever wondered how a tiny battery generates such high voltage to penetrate air and ignite gas? In reality, the battery in these lighters is not the conventional type we know but an entirely different concept. Everyday batteries, lithium, alkaline, or acid G, are essentially chemical bombs. When substances at the anode and cathode react to produce electricity, the battery dies once the reaction ends. However, the lighter's battery relies not on chemical reactions but on a physical phenomenon called the piezoelectric effect, a macroscopic manifestation of quantum mechanics. The key component here is piezoelectric ceramic, a material capable of exhibiting quantum effects. When pressed, it converts mechanical energy from your finger into high-voltage electricity, generating a spark. Naturally, this piezoelectric ceramic is inexpensive. If it weren't, electric lighters couldn't cost just tens of thousands of dollars. So, what is the pyramid? Biologists and doctors have discovered nano-silicon dioxide particles, a novel material, abundant in ancient pyramids. The granite stones forming the king and queen's chambers within the pyramid contain a high concentration of these nano-silicon dioxide particles, as if they were specially crafted or filtered. But what is the purpose of these particles? Dunn found that the Great Pyramid is primarily constructed from materials organized into three structural layers. The outermost layer, originally a white coating now faded from view, is composed of lime, gypsum, a natural insulator. Archaeologists suggest this white layer was used to reflect sunlight, making the pyramid appear larger and more majestic. However, in Dunn's analysis, beyond aesthetics, this insulating layer crucially retains energy generated inside the pyramid. The second layer consists of large exposed limestone blocks quarried from the Tura mines on the Nile River, 15 kilometers from the construction site. This forms the pyramid's main structural framework. The third layer comprises high-quality granite stones inside the pyramid, including grand corridors, the king and queen's chambers, underground tunnels, and surrounding auxiliary rooms. Remarkably, the granite here exhibits exceptional quality. The silicon dioxide, content in typical granite is about 70%. However, in these stones, silica reaches 78%, explaining their high concentration of nano-silicon dioxide particles. To obtain such high-quality granite, ancient Egyptians had to laboriously quarry it from Aswan, 700 kilometers away. Alongside these intricately crafted granite chambers, the third structural layer contains another critical component. Today, the stones we see in museums are replicas distinct from the original Eye of Horus symbol. In reality, ancient records describe the pyramid's capstone as a golden or copper stone emitting brilliant yellow light, while the main body was a massive white structure. These form the pyramid's three-layer design: an outer insulating layer, the main white limestone body, and an inner layer of piezoelectric quartz crystals with a golden capstone. The operating mechanism of the pyramid can be described as follows. First, from the underground cavities, Dunn suggests that this area was once filled with groundwater. As the groundwater flows through these cavities, it creates subterranean waves. These subterranean waves act like components that amplify the natural frequency of the entire Earth, also known as terrestrial oscillations. These oscillations can generate vibrations and resonance. The subterranean waves were accumulated in the Queen's Chamber, where an actual chemical reaction took place. Two tunnels, one to the north and one to the south, show traces of chemical substances. Specifically, the northern tunnel contains traces of graphite, while the southern tunnel has traces of water and chloride gas. When these two substances combine, they release a large amount of hydrogen gas and heat, similar to the illustration. These hot gases would then spread throughout the Queen's Chamber and travel through pipes leading to the Grand Gallery. As the amount of gas increases, the pressure within the Grand Gallery rises. As Tesla stated, just 5 psi of pressure is enough to accomplish any task. The principle of the pyramid works similarly. This pressure activates the quartz crystals in the granite stones, generating a piezoelectric effect. These powerful voltages act like the battery in a lighter, ionizing the hydrogen gas. Note that this process does not ignite the hydrogen gas. As the hydrogen gas is generated from the base and spreads throughout the space, it gradually displaces oxygen. Chemically speaking, when the concentration of hydrogen exceeds 75%, even in the presence of oxygen, it will not explode. After electrolysis, the hydrogen gas transitions into a plasma state, resembling flames. Plasma is the fourth state of matter and has the ability to generate extremely high temperatures and pressures. At this point, the entire pyramid begins to operate. Initially, the Grand Gallery of the pyramid must have been equipped with 27 Helmholtz resonators operating at very high oscillation frequencies. When air flows into these resonators in the Grand Gallery, they amplify sound energy and generate strong vibrations. These resonators were discovered by archaeologists along with related artifacts such as ancient horns or trumpets. Combined with the plasma from hydrogen gas, these resonators greatly amplify vibrational energy. The Grand Gallery is essentially a resonance amplifier, and its operating frequency has been decoded by scientists. As we already know, that frequency is 432 Hz, a natural and beautifully harmonic frequency of sound. Could Steve Jobs have known something about this sound when he created the Apple logo and startup sound? Could it be that during his meditation sessions with Indian masters, we can sense this magical sound originating from the ancient pyramids? When we enter the King's Chamber, we encounter a smooth corridor with an entrance measuring 8.4 inches by 4.8 inches. This size is precisely the optimal dimension for V3 waves to pass through most easily. Here, all vibrations reach their highest intensity. The stone door in the King's Chamber is not an ordinary door, rather, it is essentially a vibration energy amplifier, akin to a giant speaker. So how does it work? Do you remember the strange structure of the 5 ceiling layers in the King's Chamber? Why is everything else so intricate, yet this area has such a crude structure? Many people believe that the reason is because the Great Pyramid, in essence, functions as a musical instrument. Anyone who has ever tuned a musical instrument knows that no matter how sophisticated the instrument is, the part responsible for sound adjustment is always rather rudimentary. The tuner must experiment bit by bit until the precise resonant frequency is achieved. Therefore, these 5 structural layers might serve as the final tuning and amplification mechanism, tasked with bringing the entire pyramid's frequency up to the standard 432 Hz. You can imagine that the sound of the groundwater acts like an input wave, and when it is amplified in the Queen's chamber, the sound wave spreads throughout the space, then continues into the Grand Gallery. The heat from the sound wave attracts vibrations from the Earth, which continue to resonate with the piezoelectric effect of quartz, and the Helmholtz resonators further amplify the vibrational energy from the Earth. The pyramid begins to operate, the frequency of 432 Hz, the opening sound of the pyramid, starts to resonate, like an introductory chord marking the beginning of the energy's journey. Gradually, this energy accumulates within the pyramid, retained by the outer layer of white limestone, an insulating material, and is locked in place. Eventually, this energy is released through the pyramid's golden capstone, shooting up into the sky, returning to the Earth, and then being transmitted to every corner of the world. Isn't this exactly what Tesla once envisioned with the Wardenclyffe Tower? This story gradually becomes more plausible. 2 global live broadcasts from the pyramid exploration robots discovered the spherical door in the Queen's chamber. What is the significance of the electrodes on the door? And in Dunn's theory, this has been perfectly explained. These electrodes are indicator devices, assisting in monitoring the level of chemical reactions in the Queen's chamber. However, opponents of Dunn's theory raise only one question. Before you move on to other things, you must prove that piezoelectric energy can accumulate within the pyramid and be released outward. Within the framework of current theories, this remains nothing more than a piece of baseless science fiction. Is this really just science fiction? In 2019, after 20 years of Dunn's theory being dismissed as science fiction, he reappeared on the lecture stage. This time, he brought along 2 new scientific studies. One of them was conducted by a group of scientists from St. Petersburg University in Russia in 2018. They used electromagnetic waves of different wavelengths to test the Great Pyramid. They wanted to see if the pyramid could resonate with electromagnetic waves. The results showed that not only could the pyramid resonate with electromagnetic waves, but it could also focus the resonant energy into its underground cavities. The black spots on the map indicate the location of the King's chamber, and the focusing effect becomes more pronounced as the wavelength approaches 200 meters. The second study, from 2019, was conducted by Dr. Eric with the support of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, abbreviated as AIAA. His research paper had a clear title, Large Acoustic Thermal Wave Generator, with granite mountains as the main subject of study. He demonstrated that the energy generated from the piezoelectric effect in granite blocks could penetrate through rock and reach the Earth's surface via a series of thermodynamic processes and heat amplification. The study also tracked photon emissions after compressing the rock and provided an in-depth explanation of the natural piezoelectric wave emission phenomenon known as earthquake lights, the strange light rays we often observe before and after earthquakes. In fact, this is a natural phenomenon of energy release from the pyramids themselves. Ultimately, these 2 studies, after 20 years, have answered the initial doubts from those who opposed the idea that pyramids are truly capable of collecting and emitting energy. This is not science fiction but real science. The Earth truly possesses an infinite source of clean energy. And this energy can be utilized without any wires and transmitted to every corner of the globe. This inevitably brings to mind the tragedy of Tesla. The first half of his life was filled with remarkable achievements, while the latter half sank into failure. He dreamed of illuminating the entire world, but his fate mirrored that of the Wardenclyffe Tower, leaving people to sigh and regret. One day in 1897, at the age of 41, Tesla was at the peak of his career. Just recently, he and his partner, George Westinghouse, had successfully illuminated an entire city. Together, they built the first large hydroelectric plant at Niagara Falls, harnessing the Earth's powerful energy. However, on that day, Tesla told Westinghouse that he would leave the field of alternating current because using water to light up a city was not a significant accomplishment. He had a bigger dream: to use a tower to illuminate the entire world. After many years of experimentation, Tesla successfully transmitted electricity wirelessly. To achieve this, he invented a series of special bulbs that could be lit remotely. This is the type of fluorescent lamp we use today. Seeing that all his small experiments met his expectations, in 1901, he finally began constructing this tower. Since it was located in the Wardenclyffe area of New York, the tower became known as Tesla's Tower. In Tesla's imagination, this tower would transform the Earth into a giant power generator. He even gave his project a very modern name: radio. However, this concept is entirely different from what we know as radio today. Modern radio is only used to transmit signals. But in reality, Marconi borrowed Tesla's idea without acknowledgement. In Tesla's plan, radio had up to 16 applications. In summary, all wireless applications originated from the Wardenclyffe Tower. Although Tesla passed away, all important documents related to this tower were sealed. However, after surveying the site, people discovered that the tower, like the pyramids, was built on a layer of groundwater. Additionally, the tower had a series of copper rods inserted deep into the ground. These copper rods still remain, and today, we can see traces of them on the surface. So how do these copper rods draw energy from the Earth? And how is it converted into electrical energy? How can this energy be transmitted into the atmosphere to provide unlimited power for the entire planet? These questions remain unanswered. However, it cannot be denied that Tesla was once successful. Many people, including J.P. Morgan, witnessed his demonstrations. In these demonstrations, Tesla wirelessly transmitted electricity and remotely lit up light bulbs. There are even records of an experiment on Long Island where local residents reported seeing strange rays of light in the sky. Overall, like the pyramids, Tesla's tower was envisioned as an infinite, clean, and immeasurable source of energy. It would be nearly free for everyone on Earth. Once the economic implications are understood, perhaps people will realize why J.P. Morgan quickly withdrew his funding from Tesla. Morgan owned vast empires around the world, producing copper wire day and night. He also owned numerous rubber factories, which supplied insulation materials for the copper wires, as well as steel, wood, coal companies, and railroad and transportation firms. All these industries were tied to the production of generators, power poles, thermal power plants, and the transportation of coal, oil, and other energy sources. Morgan's investment in Tesla was not to help Tesla build a global power tower, but rather to expand his own business ventures. As for Tesla, he had to write letters to Morgan every month, pleading for him to continue his support. Tesla used his own money to keep the project going for a while, but the enormous debts from building the tower eventually left him bankrupt. Tesla invented alternating current, and if he had not relinquished ownership of his patent, even if he only charged 0.01 cents per kilowatt-hour, he could have quickly become the richest person in the world within a year. However, in order to help Westinghouse and fulfill his ideal of using alternating current to illuminate cities, he gave up ownership of his patent. And now, due to financial difficulties, Tesla had to watch as creditors dismantled the tower through the unfinished tunnel and sold the scrap metal to pay off debts. Tesla's tower was destroyed, and in fact, the same fate befell the pyramids. They too were once wonders that were ruined. In 1999, Dunn stated that he had discovered traces of a powerful explosion within the pyramid. First, he found numerous burn marks on the ceiling of the Grand Gallery, which should have been the location of the 27 Helmholtz resonators. Second, on the ceiling of the Queen's chamber, he observed signs of strong impacts. Additionally, the ceiling of the King's chamber in the southeast corner showed clear cracks, and these granite stones, weighing tens of tons, were shattered, indicating a powerful force of impact. Finally, the shattered remains had an unusual brown color, unlike the typical pink hue of Aswan granite, suggesting they had endured an extremely powerful energy shock. Even a corner of the stone door appeared to have melted due to the impact of an extraordinarily strong force. What could have caused such a powerful explosion? Some suspect it was seismic oscillations, while others believe it was a meteorite impact. However, these theories fail to explain the traces left behind. An earthquake would cause massive stones to shift, and a meteorite impact would leave a crater. But in reality, there are no such signs. In fact, in 2016, a research team re-examined the northern and southern tunnels in the Queen's chamber and discovered that the southern tunnel contained traces of sulfuric acid, while the northern tunnel had traces of ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. They even suspected that this was a deliberate act of sabotage, possibly through the addition of reactive substances to trigger an explosion and destroy the internal structure of the pyramid. However, this hypothesis still cannot explain why the explosive energy was so powerful that it caused the base of the King's chamber to crack and the stone door to melt. A typical chemical explosion would not be capable of causing such damage. By 2018, Dr. Shope proposed a more credible theory. First, he examined his research on the traces found on the stone of the Sphinx statue and concluded that both the statue and the pyramid dated back at least 9,000 years, when the plateau was still a tropical rainforest. Dr. Shope identified an ancient event on Earth that occurred 9,000 years ago. Shope believed that at that time, there was an extremely powerful release of energy on a global scale, strong enough to vitrify many rocks. He argued that this event was a massive solar storm, during which the sun erupted and released powerful shock waves, akin to a storm that disrupted Earth's protective magnetic field. At that moment, Earth was immediately exposed to intense cosmic ray bombardment. This was followed by unprecedented lightning storms attacking the globe. These lightning strikes were unimaginably powerful, thousands or even millions of times stronger than any thunderstorm we know of. Shope suggested that the vitrified rocks found around the world are the result of this event. Moreover, this solar storm caused irreversible damage to all devices related to electricity and magnetism. You've likely heard that solar storms can cause network outages and power failures. In fact, the most recent solar storm occurred in February 2022, causing 40 SpaceX satellites to malfunction. The strongest solar storm in recorded history took place in August 1972, when auroras were visible from both Paris and Cairo. Lightning spread across the globe, causing power stations to explode, electric towers to catch fire, and the entire communications system in the US to be disrupted for several hours. Even many circuit breakers in households burned out due to the storm's intensity. However, this storm was only 1/millionth as strong as what Dr. Shope imagined. In the catastrophic event envisioned by Dr. Shope, the pyramid underwent a devastating explosion. At the same time, this solar storm triggered a larger global catastrophe, the abrupt end of the Ice Age. In reality, why did the Ice Age end so suddenly? This remains a scientific mystery. From Antarctica to the Arctic, massive ice sheets covered regions that are now Turkey. All of them melted, causing the Ice Age to end in an instant. What were the consequences of this? Of course, the water from the melting ice led to severe global floods. Perhaps the traces on the stone of the Sphinx are evidence of that disaster. Could this be an explanation for prehistoric truth? After thousands of years, when the prehistoric civilization disappeared, the ancient Egyptians rediscovered the Sphinx and the pyramids. Relying on ancient records, they regarded these as sacred places of worship. However, the true technology behind them was not something they created, rather, they simply discovered it. They were the ones who found and observed, not the ones who built. Returning to reality, Tesla and the pyramids, Earth's energy, and vibrational resonance. Is this science fiction or actual history? Tesla once said that he could simulate experiments in his mind without theoretical research. He could envision numerous groundbreaking inventions, far surpassing current theories, such as radio, X-rays, alternating current, the radio receiver, radar, and many others. Up to 80% of modern scientific inventions are related to Tesla. It was he who pulled all of humanity into the electronic age. In summary, we have missed out on Tesla. A friend once sent me a message saying that this world did not deserve Tesla. Perhaps that is the best assessment of Tesla and of us as human beings. Human ambition has made it impossible for us to accept a Tesla. Imagine if infinite and free energy were available, we could avoid many conflicts that we find unacceptable. War and oppression might come to an end. But energy from oil, greed, and hatred are the foundational stones that make up this world. Tesla was once passionately committed to pulling us into the electronic age. He even dreamed of providing clean and free energy to remote and underdeveloped regions. However, all those dreams vanished after Tesla's death. In 1952, when Tesla passed away, the U.S. court declared that his estate would be inherited by his nephew, Mr. Kazanovic, who was then the ambassador of Yugoslavia to the United States. However, Kazanovic discovered that in the inventory of assets held by the FBI, there were 80 boxes. But he only received 60 of them. These boxes were originally prepared by Tesla. Kazanovic thought it was possible that the government had transferred items from the 80 boxes into the 60. But it is also possible that the government truly lost the remaining boxes. And these missing boxes contain Tesla's great ideas and inventions, including all documents related to the Wardenclyffe Tower. Today, we can see the remaining items from those 60 boxes at the Tesla Museum in the capital of Serbia. Perhaps what we see today is exactly what we once lost. But if Shope and Dunn are correct, that more than 10,000 years ago, there existed a prehistoric civilization on Earth that used blocks of stone and quartz to implement Tesla's ideas, then surely one day we will break free from the stagnation of the present, and a new Tesla, with love and technology, will lead us back to the first cosmic civilization that we missed. Thank you for joining Mystic Library X on this journey. If you found this video valuable, don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe to help us continue uncovering history's hidden gems. Turn on notifications to stay updated, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Stay curious, stay amazed.